Hey, you!
Who, me?
Yes, you. How would you like to learn how to sculpt Plucky Duck from Tiny Toon Adventures?
I don't think so.
Then let's get started.
I said no.
Step 1. Reference. Jump onto Google and do a search for Ecosia. It's a search engine that uses your results to plant trees or something. You're welcome, Planet Google Earth. I personally went for this little guy because he reminded me of that iconic Freddie Mercury pose. Nope, not that one. That's the one. Step 2. Blocking out. Grab your selected image and now let's try to simplify it down into shapes that we all know and can easily understand. Leaning Tower of Pisa, Leaning Tower of Pisa, half a rugby ball, 2 Hulk hands, 2 copies of the movie Flipper, and a rubber duck bill. Honestly, if you're still watching this hoping for some realistic advice, then I'd just like to say,
I feel sorry for you.
Anyway, let's get to the end result. Nope, not that one. That's the one.
I am Plucky Duck.
And now onto the sculpting. Grab a couple of spheres and start arranging them into a fashion that if anyone looked at it at almost any stage, they'd be like, I don't think this person knows what they're doing. Try to take comfort in the fact that tears are easy to wipe away. And you can always push negative feelings deep, deep down until they resurface at a later date and become someone else's problem. I think if I had to give anyone any advice when they're starting out sculpting, and let's get this straight, legally I don't, but I would say just stick with it. So you were trying to make Plucky Duck and what you've created looks more like a blobfish. The point is, that's your blobfish, and you had fun making it. Probably. Just before we move on, one fun fact about the blobfish is they don't look like this. They actually look like this. The latter being the result you get when you take a creature that's used to living at a depth of up to around 2,500 meters and bring it up to the surface. Its skin kind of just explodes. But look at me over here talking non-stop about blobfish while you're probably like, what video did I click on? So as my present to you, we'll be moving on. So maybe you're wondering, Peter, who exactly created Tiny Toon Adventures? Was it perhaps famed Hollywood director Steven Spielberg? The man behind every Hollywood film that I've ever seen and enjoyed? Was it him? Yes. Yes, it was him. And I hope you're happy because you've ruined the entire segment now. It's no longer a fun reveal.
Surprise is over, everybody. Surprise is ruined.
No, what are you talking about? It's fantastic.
Zero surprise.
Well, it's not exactly true what I said. Steven Spielberg was an executive producer on the show, and his name also appears above the main title card, but Tom Ruegger is the one credited with creating the show. Steven Spielberg and Warner Brothers approached him to flesh out their initial idea that then became Tiny Toons. The initial idea, of course, being, can we make Looney Tunes again, but I don't know, maybe tinier? Apparently this was kind of a theme of the era where they were like, should we make something new? And the studio heads were like, no, let's do the same show, but they're younger. These stupid kids will eat it up.
You kids don't know what you want. That's why you're still kids, because you're stupid.
Anyway, that was a whole lot of information and you've all been very patient, so I think it's time to reward you with a tip. But not just any old tip, no. It's a top tip. So maybe you're sculpting a hand, but you've made it in individual pieces because let's face it, it's easier that way. Now you want to join it all together, but you can't dynamesh it because it breaks the whole thing. You also can't use remesh by union because while it creates a much cleaner result, it'll merge anything together that he's touching. I found the best way around this is to use something called intersection masker. It basically creates a mask at any points that intersect in your geometry. You can then simply auto group those masks, delete out the geometry, and then run a bridge between the two sections. Once you're done merging everything, you can then run a zero mesh over the top. This will just help clean up any bad geometry you might have got from the bridging command. Now maybe you're thinking, wow, that's a great tip for ZBrush, but how do I now use that in the very specific 3D software that I use? And I'll tell you the same answer that I tell everyone else who asks that question.
How dare you speak to me?
Moving on. Now it'd be somewhat remiss of me if I spent all this time making a Tiny Toons character without mentioning the absolutely stellar theme song that accompanied the show.
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But
Tiny Toon Adventures.
had one of the best
Theme songs.
of all time.
Seamless. Maybe Kanye got a little bit wrong because I don't think you can really go past the absolutely blistering guitar solo that was the 90s X-Men cartoon. But what I liked about the Tiny Toons theme is that they really got to the point and told you exactly who they were and what they were doing. They were tiny.
We're tiny.
They were toony.
We're toony.
They were all a little loony.
We're all a little loony.
But maybe most importantly, it set up the entire premise of the show. These were Tiny Toons. They were attending Acme Looniversity to learn from the Looney Tunes how to be more loony. Something I felt as a child I could really relate to. I also had to attend school, but it was almost for the opposite reason. I had to become less loony. Peter, you have to attend school because let's face it, you're kind of an idiot. If only my teachers could see me now. I can do art, sort of. So yeah, I'm doing pretty good. All this is to say that I absolutely loved this show when I was growing up. The complaints that I made mere moments ago about studio executives never coming up with anything new, I didn't care. The fact that this show was just a reboot of Looney Tunes was absolutely fine with kid me. I loved the Looney Tunes, and seeing a fresh new take on the Looney Tunes was amazing. Basically, I'm nothing if not a hypocrite. But will I ever admit that in a court of law? No, I'll lie. I will lie my pants off. Moving on. Now this is a sculpting show, and because of that, many of you are probably just itching to hear me explain exactly what's happening on screen. And trust me, we will get to that. But not before we test out our new segment, Sea Creatures That Look Weird. There's this one, there's these guys, there's this charming little fellow. Who could forget about this one? This is just a standard clam. And this is an elephant, but it is in water, so it counts. Moving on. I do hope that everyone can appreciate the absolute Sherlock Holmes level of research that I tend to put into these videos. For instance, did you know that because of the success of Tiny Toons, they launched like 19 games? But were they any good? I don't know. I didn't look into it. All that aside, we can't overlook the real reason we're here, and that's to learn how to sculpt Plucky Duck. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Ooh, unfortunately though, we have run out of time. Make sure you tune in next week where I attempt to sculpt a version of my friends and family that are actually proud of me.